Can silver hit $50 in 2024? That is what Charlotte McLeod asked Chris Marcus from Arcadia Economics. We are actually going to be playing the entire interview and going over some of the key topics they discussed, such as what pushed silver above $50, China's interest in gold and silver, mainstream is waking up on silver, BRICS currency developments, supply can't meet rising demand, and will silver hit $50 in 2024? I will link this entire interview in the description, but without further ado, let's play this thing, and make sure you click subscribe and click the bell if you enjoy silver content, because I do post daily and I will always keep you in the loop.
Because I think a lot of people are looking at that $30 level, which has been so important for so long, and wondering, okay, so what exactly was it? And it sounds like it's more of a confluence of things that were all going on, maybe starting to build. I wonder if you could say more about the China angle, because it's something that I've been seeing a little bit about, but I definitely don't understand all the dynamics going on there.
Sure. Well, I mean, the short version, China's been buying a lot of gold for a long time, and now they've really been ramping that up. We also have the central bank gold buying. And I saw recently that this year the private imports, I think, are up on the year so far 74%, up to 543 tons of gold. Of course, if you just look anecdotally at some of the stories coming out about China, we saw pictures of the mall where there was a couple 100,000 people rushing in at one point to buy gold. I try to take those with a grain of salt. I wasn't there and don't know exactly how many people, but we see a lot of stories coming out like this. Chinese people investing in gold beans, and really China encouraging their citizens to own gold. There was a report that came out about 2 weeks ago suggesting that China is now advocating its citizens to get into silver.
Yeah, I was hoping he was going to stop and mention that because they've been focusing on gold, but about 2 weeks ago, they actually did push the narrative of now focusing on silver more than gold, mentioning it's more affordable and some of the opportunity behind it. I'm glad he mentioned that because that was really big news when that came out.
But yeah, China has been a big importer of gold. Obviously, the central banks, that's played a big factor as well. 2022 was a record year for central bank gold buying. 2023 would have been, although it fell slightly short of 2022. And then you have in the first quarter this year was a record in terms of the first quarter for central bank gold buying. So I think people can see what gold and silver bugs, and when I say people, I mean, I think we're seeing this on a national level where countries are now realizing, well, if I produce oil and I want to store the value in U.S. treasuries, like has been the arrangement for so long, they're seeing, well, with the debt continuing to soar, deficits are getting bigger. Now we're getting that big interest expense on the debt. But I think it's to the point where now, especially with what's happening with the BRICS, it's not just, well, that's a shame that that's happening, but countries are making arrangements to eliminate that from having an impact on them. So that's been a big driver. And then on the silver side, I mean, one other thing that's been out there, although this didn't change, was, as I know I've seen in some of your interviews, we have the silver deficit that has now been reported 5 years in a row from Silver Institute. I know a lot of people are wondering, or sometimes I hear the word silver shortage. I have not seen any direct evidence of an industrial silver bar shortage. So I want to make that clear because I know some of these terms get used interchangeably. Now, with that said, if the deficit numbers are accurate as suggested, certainly the possibility that we could head towards that path.
Okay, so the silver shortage, I'm glad he mentioned how loose the term could be used. When, for example, I talk about the silver shortage, it's more of the direction we are headed as we do not have enough silver to go green. with the amount of silver we need, with the record-breaking supply deficits the past 3 years in a row, over 500 million ounces in the red the last 3 years alone. Every year, it's getting worse and worse, supply diminishing, demand growing. In the next 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, we are going to be in a situation where we just simply don't have enough silver, and that is where silver's true potential comes from. Now, when you really want to incorporate these numbers on top of just not, and here's the thing, he went off the Silver Institute's numbers. Now, I like Chris Marcus, but we all know that there's much more silver than just the silver shore, or the amount of silver in play or in question goes a lot farther than just the Silver Institute's numbers. That's a better way to word it. For example, you've probably seen a lot of the pickaxe stuff with John Forrest Little mentioning how much silver is needed in military and aerospace. Well, the Silver Institute doesn't incorporate those numbers. They stopped doing that years and years ago, decades ago. So when we're talking about the amount of silver needed, and that's why you'll see like the U.S. Defense Department raiding our own silver stockpiles, that's because silver is extremely useful and it's a critical element that is needed on more than one scale than just solar and EVs. I mean, it takes 500 ounces of silver in a single Tomahawk missile, up to 11,000 ounces in some of these torpedoes. So with all these new wars advancing, with all the silver that's needed in this era and that, in this category, with N-type solar cells now needing more silver. So these new solar panels are actually requiring more silver than the previous versions. And so to make things more efficient, even if it requires more silver, they're still going to do that. So we are just headed in a direction where there's definitely a massive silver shortage forming. Now, to put it in scale of we have enough silver bars right now, even looking at those numbers, I mean, the LBMA, the COMEX, and the LME have all admitted that their inventories are damn near, drained out. So, it's a very loose term. You have to, because here, the average person that doesn't know these numbers, that doesn't do the research like Chris and I do, they hear silver shortage and they will make up their own assumption of what we're talking about. So sometimes we might have to be a little more thorough. Usually when I'm talking about it, I'm bringing the types of evidence and information or the context behind what I mean. But sometimes if they just hear that term, they won't really understand the conversation, the narrative behind said topic. So I'm glad he brought that up though.
Is becoming a greater possibility. So you see these conditions that I don't think we're at a shortage of silver yet, but certainly have a tight market that if this continues, and Silver Institute did forecast another large deficit for the years going this year and the years going forward. So the potential to get there, and again, this didn't just happen beginning in February, so I wouldn't call that the main driver, but I think all these things add up, and that's traditionally been the way that it happens in gold, but especially silver, where they build up for a while, and then at some point you see the impact of that.
Selling gold, but also I believe silver.
Here they're mentioning silver in mainstream. She goes over, I already watched this. She mentions how gold was being sold in Costco since a couple years ago, and now Costco actually started selling physical silver, which talking about mainstream, so they go over that. But I want to go over, here's some more important stuff. We already kind of highlighted this with the supply can't meet rising demand, but let's go over the question of will silver hit $50 in 2024, and maybe we will recycle back to this, but there's a lot here. Since we already just talked about this, let's move on to this question though.
Right, and kind of going back to prices, we started off by talking about how did we get to this point, and I think what a lot of people of course want to know now is where does silver go from here. So we've also been talking about how it's hard to make predictions and make promises, especially when it comes to silver. But what are you seeing heading into 2024 and perhaps beyond?
Gee, well, that's an interesting spot for silver right now, because I was waiting to see what happens when we got to 30. And it really has been an exciting week and 2 days since that's happened, because it didn't just get to 30. Almost broke through to 32 the day that it broke through 30. I hear a lot of people wondering, is $50 next? And I guess the way I see it, there's parts of these past couple of months that have reminded me a bit of 2011, just where there's some days where it feels like it's almost day after day the price is going up $1. So I don't know that I would say that we're imminently headed towards 50. Does the possibility of something like that happen, similar to 2011, where a lot of the banks were caught short and got squeezed? So you do have an environment where that becomes possible. Perhaps the one thing I would caution people against is that, could it go back below 30? Absolutely. And I think it's really encouraging that it is above 30. And I think as we're recording, it's above 32 right now. But keep in mind that we've seen a lot of volatility. Silver moved $1.50 a couple of times in the past 2 or 3 weeks, which, was a bigger size move on silver. So I know that's not much of the answer you were hoping for, but I mean, I think silver in the long term, everything that we've talked about is why it's still, to me, a good long-term bet. In the short term, I would expect you're going to see it pretty darn volatile. And I mean, is there a chance for $50 this year? There are scenarios in which that could happen, but I don't know that I would say that we're in a guarantee of that. But certainly with some of the things that are building underneath the surface, yeah, it's possible.
Okay, so the whole point of that really wasn't even about will silver hit $50 this year. And I'm glad that he really didn't stress that as the most important takeaway either. So, of course, there's possibility, especially given the huge BRICS meeting in October with like 150 countries coming together. Just speculation, not even looking at what could form out of that, or what would be happening in terms of what they do in the meeting. Just the speculation of that huge BRICS meeting, the month or two leading up to it, could affect prices as the markets move so much off speculation. But not only the huge BRICS meeting in October, then we have the November election as well, where we know precious metals, safe havens, metals, they definitely are affected in terms of or I guess positively affected when people are uncertain, right? When they don't trust governments, when they fear governments. They're called safe haven assets for a reason. So not even looking at the actual situations that form out of them, just the speculation of how crazy the end of the year is going to be could move markets a little bit. But that's not even the point. It doesn't even matter if silver hits $50 by the end of the year or not. The biggest takeaway right now is that it broke past 30. That is very important. It broke past 12-year highs. Right. The last time we saw silver past 32 was when it was on its way up to $50 in 2011. That is very important. So looking back the last couple of years when silver would break up to 28 or 29, that is not the same type of situation as this, because last time it never broke past that psychological $30 level, meaning it still was below it. Now we broke past it. It means two things. It means now it's easier for it to stay above 30 and go higher, and it's harder for it to break below 30 and stay lower and go lower. Whereas before we broke past that $30 resistance, when it would go up to 28, 29 and bounce back down, it was a lot easier for it to go lower, a lot harder for it to go higher. But now we broke above it. Now it's a lot easier to go higher and a lot harder to go lower. And that's why, for example, even when we got down to 29 a couple days ago, now it's back up to almost $31. So now it's easier for it to keep bouncing up without dropping significantly downwards. So we are in a different situation. So if anyone's saying, well, silver always did this, it's not going to do it, it's going to go back down. Well, that's not necessarily true. It could, but we're just in a different situation, and that is being literal. We literally have not seen silver up to those levels since it was on its way to $50 in 2011. So it is just straight up just a different situation. Take it or leave it how you want, but that is the truth. Now, once again, $50 silver, that shouldn't be anything that you care about anytime soon unless you're planning on selling anytime soon, which you shouldn't be. You know, the whole idea that people want silver prices to go higher right now means that they need validation and confirmation that it can go higher. True silver stackers don't need that. We know it will, right? And I'm not planning on, if I ever do sell, I'm not planning on selling for another 10, 15 years. So why in the world would I want it to be $50 by the end of 2024? The only reason I would want that is so I'm validated. Like, yeah, it can. We already know it can and it will eventually. Do you think silver, and Chris Marcus even said, we've seen it go up several dollars within a few day period. Do you think in the next 2 years it's not, that situation is not going to happen again, or there's not going to be a huge rally one of these weeks again, like it's happened time and time again over the past couple of months? Of course it will. And next time, who knows what would happen, since we already broke past that big barrier that we never have previously. So anyways, I'm gonna wrap this video up here. I don't want to show the entire interview. I feel like I'd be taking views away. If you want to go watch this entire thing with Charlotte McLeod and Chris Marcus, which is from Arcadia Economics, then I will link it in the description. Go watch the whole thing yourself. Let me know what you think about this. I did think it's interesting, and I thought they brought up some good points that I wanted to comment on. If you do like me watching other videos and, just pushing pause and throwing my 2 cents in at some when they bring up a good point or two, then let me know in the comment section below. I definitely enjoy this. I like watching things instead of me just always reading articles for you guys. I think it would be fun if I started watching videos as well with you all. So let me know what you think about that. If you wanted to purchase precious metal for a good price, then email me slayer@milesfranklin.com or call me 330-485-6172. Thanks for tuning in. This was Silver Slayer. I will see you guys tomorrow. Or actually later today. Peace.